And the thing is, I'm going to tell you now, you already know it. This expansion is never going to make it up. The Undead player is not even going to try, because he's simply not going to be able to put the thing up without the Elf player destroying him. Now, right here, I mean, the question that you can ask yourself is, why is the Elf player camping the Expo? I mean, the Expo is up. The Expo is getting gold, right? Like, why does he need to sit here? Well, look at the right side of the map. I mean, what is there left that can really be crept, right? There's a green spot, but it's not worth jacking the Undead player. And what Hot is doing right now is he's thinking to himself, he's saying, okay, we just had a major battle. I won. I have hero levels on my opponent. What should I do? Well, I shouldn't attack his base prematurely, because I could lose too many units and die if I mess up, because Undead bases are ridiculous, number one. Number two, I could run around and try and find him in the middle of the map, but what choices does my Undead opponent have? The Undead opponent has choices like build up to 80 or 100 food and win a fight against the Elf player, or go for a desperate push on the Expo. And so by camping here, the Elf player simply guaranteed that a desperate push on the Expo wouldn't have jumped the thing and been able to kill it just in time for it to work out. Now, and even now, you see the Elf player is going out, running around the map, but he's got Dryads that are scouting for him. He's letting him know, because, once again, one of the major and few choices left for this Undead player is a desperate push in the Expo. So the Elf player is going to deny that option to him by scouting and staying aware of the game. Also, we can see the Elf player's over here trying to take items from the shop that is more or less in possession of the Undead player, because it's not on the side of Hot's map. By doing this, he's merely denying items. He is abusing the advantage that he's getting from having multiple mines, and you see here he's now up to 79 of 80 food. He's now at 80 of 80 food, right? So, our Elf player has secured an advantage by using the Warden throughout the game. Early on, the Warden was used to shadow strike individual ghouls to help focus them down so that a ghoul push or a ghoul harass wouldn't be near as effective. During the middle of the game, the Warden was used in order to scout and keep track of where the Undead army was. Had it looked like the Undead army was going to make a realistic push on the Elf base, then what could have happened is the Elf player could have run units home and used Warden to keep focusing on units. And the one major conflict that happened mid-game between the two armies, the Warden focused on the Death Knight. The Death Knight was forced to burn a teleport home without killing anything, right? So, if you keep track of where your opponent is and think about what they're doing, it's really going to help you out. Had Hot seen a lot more Fiends from the Undead player whenever he was running around in his base more towards middle game time, he probably wouldn't have teched as quickly as he did, and he probably would have stayed home to guard his tier 2 buildings a little bit more. But like I said, he was watching. He had a wisp in the middle that said, hey look, Undead player didn't pick up a Naga, I've got a Panda, he still doesn't have a Naga, he must be training a Lich, which means he's probably not going to try to push my tier 2 buildings because he'll be too late. Now, one quick interesting thing to look at is this Panda is running around with an invisibility potion. And if you think about the effectiveness of this, I absolutely love it, because Panda is invisible going into the fight. So Panda gets 1 breath of fire, right? Then, let's say Panda uses an invuln pop. 2 breath of fires. Then, Panda pops out of the invuln, gets focus fired, healing potion, and scroll of healing. That's another, I mean, that's 3 breath of fires. It's more than enough that you're going to need in a fight to really be effective. And then worst case scenario, the Elf can teleport home, he's got an Expo. And here's another thing. I spoke earlier about resources and when to break 50. If you look at the Elf is now at 80 of 90. So there's another Moonwell that's been built. This Elf player is getting ready to literally break into high upkeep. But watch. Watch when he does it and how he makes his decision to know that it's the right time to go ahead and do this. Really quick, whenever we get to the 20-minute mark, I'm going to tell you to go half speed, and that's going to be important for analyzing these fights that we're going to go into. Now, when it comes to army composition, you can see the Elf is focusing on Dryads. The reason for this is he knows to expect air units, and also, once again, I mean, the lack of Fiends, just, it tells him he doesn't need as many units to focus down Fiends in terms of bears. Alright, and here we go. There's going to be some little skirmishing that's going to go on here, but not too much. The Elf player literally has just complete map control. There's nothing that the Undead player is going to be doing on the top right half of the map except going for this expansion, and he knows if he's there. And there we go. The Elf player is now set to go to 200 or up to high upkeep, and he's now getting upgrades on his units before he even does it. All right, here we go. We're at 19 and 12. Okay, Elf player's moving back, and he sees the Undead player start to run at him, and this is when he goes into high upkeep. This is the exact same concept. You go into high upkeep, or you change upkeep levels, again, whenever you're looking at going into a major game-defining fight. So if you look here, the positioning of the elf as he's splitting up his army is not even doing it in terms of groups of dryads this way, bears this way. He's putting both of each type in these two different areas, north and over to the left. And he's just trying to bait the undead player into here so he can run on top of him to decrease the effectiveness of meat wagons and different things like this. But here we go. Again, they're just back and forth, back and forth. And, alright, we're at 1950. Get ready to go to half speed here in just a few seconds. It'll be boring, I promise. 57, 58, 59, half speed. Alright, the thing is, DPS comes in waves. If you just saw that, right, the the Death Knight and the Lich just put a ton of damage on the Warden. Warden makes a good move. He uses the invuln pot to turn off the cast. Now here comes another wave of DPS. You're going to see a Shadow Strike is going to hit a unit, and then Breath of Fire is going to go off. And it's after these waves of damage that units die, right? All these Dryads now focus this Fiend. Fiend is down, right? That was right after a Breath of Fire. Now here, not many units are going to die for just a little bit. Panda's going to take some damage. It looks like one Fiend is going to die here in the meantime, but watch what happens here on this next Breath of Fire. The Panda's going to move south. This is huge, right? A lot of players will go into games as elves and be like, oh, hey, I did a Drunken Haze and a Breath of Fire on your A-bombs. That was really useful. How about you put it on the meat wagons? Look at these things. He does his Breath of Fire. Look, meat wagon's going to go down. Meat wagon's going to go down. I believe another Fiend in like an A-bomb goes down while the Undead player is just trying to leave the fight. Boom, there goes the Fiend. Here goes the A-bomb. And the elf player is down to, what, 74 food. The elf player hasn't lost that much in this fight. So, huge things from this, right? Whenever you're using your Panda's Breath of Fire, put it on the meat wagons, please. Like, it's much more effective, right? Another thing is there's a big debate about how you should be using your Dryads in terms of whether they should be attack moving or towards the front line of the Undead player to slow down their attack speed, or maybe they should do like a million different things. Maybe the Dryads should be focusing down Fiends, or maybe they should be focusing strictly on the meat wagons. I think making this decision depends on the game that you play. I played a game yesterday where literally the absolute greatest call ever was to run them around. First I focused Fiends, and then I spread my Dryads around my army like you saw happen in the first fight on this one, and then they focused on meat wagons. Let's see here. Look here. Once again, you saw Breath of Fire do a ton of damage to those meat wagons, and that's what happens in this game. When I talk about DPS happening in waves, you can watch this happen in almost all matchups that you're going to play in. Whenever you're playing against a human player, you're going to see that you don't really lose bears until a Mountain King does a hammer. When a Mountain King does a hammer, you take a ton of damage on that one unit because he focuses everything on it to get the kill. And whenever you watch this matchup, even if the Warden only goes for Shadow Strike, this is a beautiful buy. Warden buys an invuln pot to deny it to the Death Knight, also blocks the silence by activating it, and then kills the Death Knight. This was a great move at that moment. But anyways, to go back to what I was talking to you about, DPS comes in waves. And so let's say that